Alright, so here I have a piece of copper pipe that I can cut up into little pieces to make a square. And I typically want my square to be about 8 inches in size. I don't want it to be too small, or else the whole thing will get too hot when I'm putting it together. And I don't want it to be too big, or else it'll be hard to dunk it in the water trough to see if there's any leaks. So about 8 inches is a good size. Now, when we're working with a T-joint, typically there's an area in the middle that we have to compensate for when we cut the pipe. And typically the amount that we have to compensate for is about the same as the size of the pipe. So we're working with 1/2 inch pipes here, and so the area that's going to be missing in the middle is going to be just a little bit bigger than 1/2 inch in size. So if I wanted this pipe to be 8 inches long when I'm done, right, I'd have to cut it so that the two sides add up to 7.5 inches, right? Which would be about 3 3/4 of an inch for each piece on each side. And so you can mark this pipe at, let's say, 3 3/4, or you could cut it at 4 inches and just make the other sides a little bit longer than 8. It doesn't really matter to me which one you do, right? It's just a little bit over or a little bit under, no problem, all right? So I would get my ruler, right, and I would measure and mark the pipe, let's say at 4 inches. It's always best to cut the small pieces first. So now that I have a mark on my pipe, I can get my pipe cutter and I can lower it down right onto my mark. And one of the things that people will do is they'll put the pipe a little bit too far back in the cutter, and it will only be resting on one of the rollers on the bottom. Okay? Now, once I tighten the roller down, all right, I can start rotating it around. And every time I rotate it around, I can kind of tighten the wheel up just a little. I don't want to tighten it too quickly, or else I'll smash the pipe with the roller. And as the as the pipe cutter gets old, the cutting wheel gets dull, and we would have to go slower than when the cutter is new. All right. We could also get a new cutting wheel and replace the dull one when we want. Now, as we work our way through here, it'll start to penetrate into the center of the pipe, and we should be able to feel that and maybe grab the pipe before it falls on the floor. If it falls on the floor, we'll probably get a little dent, and it's always good to take a fitting after you drop it on the floor and make sure that it still fits inside without much problem. A lot of times after you drop a pipe on the floor, it won't go into the fitting. These are pretty tight fitting. We don't want it to be too tight. We want to be able to rotate it inside, right, when we go to do that. Now, once I cut both sides of this section here, then I can take my tape measure and measure how far it is across from one end to the other with a piece on both sides, right? Then I know how long to make this side here, right? And this side here, and this side here. These three sides are all the same. This is the only side where we have two short pieces. And we want these to be the same as the other three sides, right, when we're done. Okay. Now, after I cut all of my pieces, I would take my reamer, and this tool here is to kind of clean up the inside of the pipe. As we cut the pipe, it kind of smashes it, right? And we'll leave a little burr on the inside. And a lot of times this burr, little pieces can come loose and get into the refrigeration liquid and wreak havoc with the pumps and stuff like that. So we don't want any loose pieces of copper inside. With water pipe, it can actually make the diameter of the pipe smaller and kind of restrict the flow. And so we would work this to take away any burr on the inside, right? I can see that this side here, the person that cut was smashing the pipe too much as they were making the cut. And so now the end is kind of damaged, right? That person didn't know how to use the cutter. Now, here I have a piece of emery cloth. And emery cloth is very similar to sandpaper, but instead of made out of paper, it's made out of cloth. And this allows me to wrap the sandpaper around the pipe, and I'll grab this whole pipe and I'll turn it while I'm squeezing the end. And I'll sandpaper the end of the pipe further back than where the fitting is going to go, right? So that when I put the fitting on, I still have some area that's sanded past where the fitting goes. And the dirtier the pipe is, the more sanding we have to do. We cannot solder dirty pipes together. Okay. Now, this fitting here is real clean, and so it doesn't need a lot of cleaning. But another thing that the emery cloth will do, make little scratch marks that allow the solder to grab on to the metal better. Right? And so I'll clean around the inside. Now, they do make other tools, and one of them is a brush, right? And we can stick this inside, and it will scratch the inside of the fitting also. And this just makes everything solder together easier, right? So, we'll clean the inside there. Now that I've put this together, I will flux the end of it. And after fluxing it, I'll stick the pieces together and I will rotate it inside. And a lot of times a little bit of flux comes squeezing out. And what I'll do is I'll take my brush and I'll go around and I'll get both sides of the joint where it's going to be soldered. Now this fitting right here is ready to be joined together with the solder. All right, but I don't do one at a time. I will put together the whole piece. After I get the whole square put together, then I will light up my torch and go around in a circle, soldering up each one of the connections. It's best to start in a certain point and move in a circle than it is to jump around from corner to corner, randomly doing the joints up. If we do it in a circle, then we can actually use the heat from doing one joint to warm up the joint that we're going to do next and work our way around. Okay? Now when we solder these together, what we'll do is we will heat it up, and we'll look for this flux to start smoldering and creating smoke. And remember, we don't want to get this smoke in our eyes. So look which direction the smoke is going and keep it away from your face. All right? Once we see it start to smolder, then we know we can add filler material. And if everything is hot enough, when we add the filler metal, it'll go all the way around and into the joint by itself. Which means we don't have to flip it over and do it on both sides. Okay? So maybe we should turn on